right, we've all been behind an audio console. When somebody walks up on stage, they grab a mic, they start talking, and nothing happens. Or somebody gets on stage, they start playing an instrument, and everybody's sitting there watching them play the instrument, and they know that there's supposed to be something happening, but there's no sound coming out of the PA. Or you're watching your Facebook live stream from church the previous day, and you're noticing, oh, there's video, but there's no audio, and I have no idea why. Okay, so we've all been in these specific situations, but unfortunately, we spend a lot of time learning about how to mix, how to be excellent at our craft, but we don't spend a lot of time setting ourselves up for success to do that thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about different tips and tricks in order to troubleshoot your system and problems when things go wrong. So I've got 3 things to share with you. The third thing being that biggest trick that I promised in the title of this video. So the first thing is you have to understand the signal flow of every single source on your stage. So what I mean by that is if I have a microphone, it goes through a cable, then it goes probably to a stage rack of some sort, then through a snake, and then to the audio console. That's usually a simple setup that most of those sources are going to follow. Okay, so if I understand my signal source or my signal flow, I understand from A to Z exactly every single step in the process of that. Okay, I have to understand this because if I don't know where it goes after it leaves the cable, then there's no hope of me being able to solve where the problem is. If I can't track down the path that it's taking, I won't be able to diagnose where the disconnect is in that process. Okay, so that's the first thing. You got to understand your signal flow. The second thing is you have to have a system set up where you can actually access every point in the signal flow that we talked about in the first point. So let me give a couple examples of where this can go wrong. Let's say that you walk up to an audio console and you look behind the console and there's just this mountain of XLR cables, okay? And then you have a mic go out on stage that's plugged in somewhere through all those cables and you have absolutely no idea where it's actually plugged into. You have no idea how to trace it out because we've got all these long cables and a mess. There's a bunch of gear here that I have no idea what it does or how it's maybe or maybe not playing a part in this problem. Okay, so if we have a system set up where it's streamlined, where it's clean, where it's organized, where all of this gear, I'm telling you, I've seen systems that have been there for so long that they have so much gear in the system, maybe rack gear that's not being used anymore. So when we're troubleshooting, we're like, we haven't used this piece of gear in forever, but I have no idea what it's connected to and if it's playing a part in this problem. And so getting rid of all that old gear and simplifying your system is going to help kind of clean it out, help you to see what you're working with. Another big problem I see is when there's a pile of cables and they're all 50 feet long. Like, who needs 50-foot long XLRs unless you're running speakers? Okay, so switch out your really ridiculously long cables, replace them with the 5-foot to 10-foot cables, and it'll really simplify this process. Okay, doing all of these things will help you be able to look at your system and have access to every point that you need to have access to, and then you can go in and figure out quickly where the problem is. Now, the third thing, this is the big trick that I promised in the title of this video. The third thing is making input-output lists. And those are exactly what they sound like. It's a list of all of the inputs and outputs of every single piece of gear in your signal flow. So let me show you an example of what an input-output list looks like. This list I made for a church that I've done a lot of audio work for. They have a stage rack here. They've got, this is the stage rack inputs, then stage rack outputs. They have a stage rack expander, so they've just got an expander unit. I have that listed here. I have the audio console that they have at front of house, inputs and outputs. They have an expander at the console as well, inputs and outputs there. And then this, even down to the detail of having the ME500s listed, which is the Allen and Heath personal mixer system they use for in-ear monitors. So we we have even that laid out. So I have every piece of gear in the signal flow, all the inputs and outputs listed on here. Now, if you'll notice, some of them have something plugged into them, others don't. These are some empty channels right here. So this allows me to do a couple of things. First off, it helps me to know exactly where every single source is plugged into. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, where is the electric guitar plugged into? Where is it supposed to go? I can look at this list here. I know it's going to be in the stage rack, and I can look at this list and say, all right, you're in channel 10, okay? They say, hey, where are the drums plugged into? I can say, all right, they're in channel 21. Okay, so that took like 2 seconds, and I can tell exactly where things are supposed to be plugged into. Another thing it helps me do is know exactly what channels are free to use. If somebody comes to me 5 minutes before service starts and says, hey, I want to use this instrument on stage in 5 minutes, where do I plug it into? I can look at this list and say, hey, you got channels 11, 12, 13, 17 to 20, and then 22 open. Pick one of those, set yourself up, and then let me know which one you pick, and I'll run you from the console. Okay, so it's really simple, really easy. I know exactly where I can assign new channels. The third thing kind of runs in a similar vein, but as far as outputs go, how many of us have had problems with, your right speaker went out, or your left speaker went out, or your subs aren't getting any information for whatever reason? This also helps us to know exactly where our outputs are going as well, okay? So I can say, hey, my subs are in channel 3. I need to go check, make sure that the board is sending signal to channel 3, and then I can go check channel 3 and make sure everything is wired correctly, okay? So it's easy to see how a resource like this is really, really helpful in diagnosing problems. If something goes out, I know exactly where to look. If I need to set up something new, I know exactly where I can go to set up something new. So hopefully this was helpful to kind of give a breakdown of this is how the list works, and this is how it would be really helpful in your troubleshooting process. This is something that we don't put enough emphasis on in mixing, is really setting ourselves up for success, making sure our system is clean, is organized, is set up so that in the event of something going wrong, I can go directly to it and figure out exactly what the problem is, fix it, and then be able to help the show go on with minimal distraction. So if you're new to this channel, typically we spend a lot of our time talking about the things that make us good mixers, the techniques and the skills, but a big part of it is this setup process. But if you're new to this and you're trying to learn the basics of this process, I have a guide on my website called the 7-Step Mix. And this guide will walk you through the 7 steps that I take in every single mix. It'll give you a great systematic process to give you consistent positive results. So if that sounds like it'd be helpful for you, you can go download it for free on my website, themixingprocess.com. Again, completely free to you. I'd encourage you to go check that out. I think it'll really help you in that process. But for now, if you have any questions about this topic, about any other topic in your mixing journey that you're trying to solve your own problems, I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can type them in the comments below, or you can actually contact me directly on my website, themixingprocess.com. But until then, go be good at what you do. Hopefully this was helpful, give you some ideas of how you can be more efficient and effective at your job behind a console. Thanks for watching. We will see you on the next one.